Hi, my name is Dr. John Pates, and I've been using hypnotherapy for sports performers for the past 30 years. In fact, my whole PhD, when I was studying many years ago, that's back in 2002, was actually on the use of hypnosis in sports. Now, why would I use hypnosis in sports? Okay, well, if you actually research the literature on hypnosis and research the literature on sport, you'll find that hypnotic states are very similar to what we call flow states in sport. Flow states, or the zone, is really the holy grail in sports. When athletes get into a flow state, they actually perform at their peak. And we all know this. But the hardest thing for most sports psychologists or people working as performance psychologists for sports people is to try to get them into that zone. So you do a lot of skills training, you do the nutrition stuff, and you do all the skill-based work, but still doesn't get people into that fantastic zone state where people lose their self-consciousness and they lose their ego. It's transcending the ego, really. That's what you're trying to do. And once that shuts down and people go into these like alpha theta brainwave patterns, very similar to sleep or dream states, they get into this place called the zone. And when you're in the zone, you start doing things even you do not think you can do. In other words, the barriers break down. And this is really what's all happening here. There's very little self-talk. There's very little of conscious processing. And it's all about the unconscious taking over. Well, hypnosis is fantastic for that, and I did many studies back in the day, back in the 2000s and 2002s, where I looked at how hypnosis can get people into flow states, and we found it had a profound effect on this. This is not really that well known either in the world of sports psychology. Very few sports psychologists actually focus on the unconscious mind. And this is so important when you're dealing with high-level performers, as I've done. I've worked with the Ryder Cup team. I've worked with 5 major winners. I've worked with many international sports teams globally. I've worked with world champions. I've worked with Olympic champions. And the greatest thing you can do is get them to work at an unconscious level. In fact, only yesterday I was working with a young man who plays for Wigan Athletic, and we did a hypnosis session. And in that hypnosis session, he had 1 assist and scored a goal. That's what we programmed our mind to do, okay? And it is a bit like a program. When you visualize it and visualize what you want to happen and visualize yourself going into the zone, these kind of things happen when in the real world, when you go out and perform. And this is the most amazing thing about hypnosis. Hypnosis actually is creates a narrative, I think, in your mind, a story. And as you might know from psychology, the stories you tell are the things that really control everything in your life and control the quality of your life. But so by creating a story in the theater of your own imagination through hypnosis, you can create a program of excellence. And that's exactly what we did. And yesterday, he went out and scored a goal and made an assist, which was quite extraordinary because it was exactly what we were trying to program to do. So this is a really good understanding how you can use hypnosis. I also use it as a way of building confidence in athletes. I get them to review some of their greatest moments. And in doing that, it brings on great confidence about what their strengths are and the emotions they need to perform at their peak, because everything is about emotions. Can you get athletes into positive emotions? And by going into the unconscious mind with hypnosis, this gives you a great tool to do that, because you cannot get into the zone unless you're in positive emotions. And you cannot get into the zone unless you're accessing unconscious resources. So that is why hypnosis is a fantastic tool for getting people into high level peak performance states. So if you want to know more about how to optimize performance using hypnosis, please get in touch with me. I've got my own website, www.drjohnpates.com. You can find me in the hypnotherapy directory, and I'm based in Malvern, England, right in the center of England, if people want one-to-one live sessions. Take care. Bye.